Ah, the good old 90s. It was a time where Furbies were our best friends, but only if we got our hands on one. A time where our number one priority was feeding our Tamagotchis, only to have them die when we slept in too long. A time when McDonald's started supersizing our meals, something that we never really needed. A time where not knowing how to do the Macarena made you a social outcast. And most importantly, a time when JRPGs blossomed. This video is going to look at perhaps the most significant decade for JRPGs in terms of their rise in worldwide popularity. This great genre is still going strong today, but a common sentiment is they don't make games like they used to. Well, this is how they used to make them. The 90s is home to many of our favorites, or even perhaps our very favorite RPG of all time. But this video isn't going to simply list the 10 best JRPGs of the decade. Instead, I'm going year by year. And I tell ya, this format is hard. Many of my favorite RPGs of all time will unfortunately miss out, all because of some stupid rules that some stupid content creator thought up while he was changing his 2-year-old's shitty nappy. This list is also just my personal opinion, and I know it will be totally different to yours, so let me know what your favorite RPGs are by year in the comments below. Before we begin, if you like this video, it would help me out a lot to hit that like button and sub for more RPG content coming soon. Also, hit that super thanks if you'd like to support the channel. Alright, this is the 90s. Let's get into it. The winner of 1990 is Dragon Quest IV, which was originally titled Dragon Warrior 4 in North America due to copyright concerns regarding a tabletop RPG also called Dragon Quest. This was the first title of the Zenithian trilogy, which refers to Dragon Quests 4, 5, and 6. The major change this time around is that the narrative is broken up into 5 distinct chapters, each focusing on different characters. The first 4 chapters are told from the hero's companion's perspective, and the 5th from the hero's point of view, where it finally brings all of the characters together. This storytelling was really cool and well ahead of its time. From a gameplay perspective, Dragon Quest IV featured an AI system that allowed the player to provide strategies to party members who they were not controlling. While the options here were pretty limited, it is still rare for a game to be doing this in 1990. Dragon Quest IV was met with critical acclaim and had some crazy sales figures too. It sold over 3 million copies, becoming the 4th highest selling Famicom game ever behind Dragon Quest III and of course Super Mario Bros. 3 and 1. Also worth noting is that Dragon Quest IV was first remade for the PlayStation in 2001 and then once again for the DS in 2007. Both of these remakes included an extra chapter as well as the ability to manually control other party members in battle. The best JRPG of 1991 is none other than Final Fantasy IV. Perhaps the most significant addition to this title was the inclusion of the ATB battle mechanic. No longer was a character's turn order strictly turn-based. Now the player would need to input orders in real time. This feature of course became a staple of the series and was used in every game up until Final Fantasy X, which returned to its turn-based roots. Gameplay aside, Final Fantasy IV was when the FF series really took a step forward in terms of its character development and storytelling. I mean, I've heard many people say that FF4 is their favorite story and game in the entire series. It had some amazing moments and 10 points for starting the whole Spoony Bard thing. Fun fact, this story had to be reduced to a quarter of its original length due to cartridge limitations. It wasn't until the Game Boy Advance port that the flow of the story was improved and the plot details absent from the original were finally restored. In 2008, Final Fantasy IV even received a sequel titled The After Years. This game was set 17 years after the events of the original game, with its story told in episodic tales. The winner of 1992 is Lunar, the Silver Star. This JRPG was released on the Sega CD. If you're unfamiliar, this was a CD-ROM accessory that could be attached to the Sega Genesis. This CD format allowed the game to make use of beautiful anime cutscenes as well as high-quality audio and voice acting. This charming story centers around Alex, a young small-town boy with the dream of one day becoming a great hero like Dragon Master Dine. The gameplay has a very old-school feel to it in its visuals, exploration, and turn-based combat system. Lunar the Silver Star was very successful and is the second best-selling Sega CD title of all time, behind Sonic the Hedgehog CD. While this original version was a hit at the time, many people got their first taste of Lunar through the enhanced version, Silver Star Complete, released on the Saturn and the PlayStation. This version features new story additions and a deeper cast of characters. It's been about 20 years since I last played this classic, and just talking about it here makes me want to jump in again. I think I'll have to play this one again really soon. (1993). This is when things start to get really difficult. There were quite a few contenders here such as Secret of Mana and Breath of Fire, but for me, it is Phantasy Star IV that takes the cake. Often regarded as the best in the original series, Phantasy Star IV Age of the Millennium follows Chaz Ashley as he journeys the world investigating the relationship between biomonsters and the planet's ecological crisis. The story and the cast of characters here are really strong and is supported by loads of comic book style scenes that help bring these characters to life. Something I loved about this game is the macro system, which allows players to pre-program actions and unleash them on enemies in an instant. This made getting through the myriad of random encounters not so painful. In addition, it also allowed for powerful combination attacks between characters and is one of the reasons why the gameplay was praised by critics. For these reasons, it is no surprise that Phantasy Star IV often makes it onto top 100 RPGs of all time lists. 1994 was another year with so many awesome Super Nintendo RPGs, but if I don't have this one at number 1, I don't think I'd ever forgive myself. Of course, I'm talking about Final Fantasy VI, which, if you ask me, is one of the best RPGs of all time. FF6 is an incredible game in every way and is easily my favorite on the Super Nintendo. From the unforgettable story to the large, memorable cast of characters, this is a game that I will never get sick of playing. Something I loved about FF6 is that it's told through multiple points of view and doesn't have a clear main character. There are so many amazing moments here, such as the iconic Opera House scene. It's really hard to believe how powerful and engrossing 16-bit graphics with simple music notes can actually be. Add this to an incredible soundtrack, solid RPG mechanics, and the best combat system that the series had seen up to that point, and you have yourself one hell of an RPG. While Final Fantasy VI may be my favourite RPG on the console, another very popular favourite is Chrono Trigger, and it is easy to see why. The development team here consisted of industry legends including Hironobu Sakaguchi, Yuji Horii, and Akira Toriyama. This team is often dubbed as the Dream Team, and it's true, dreams really do come true when these guys get together. Chrono Trigger was a bestseller in Japan and was incredibly well received by critics and fans alike. It's like an example of a game where everything just comes together so perfectly. The great cast of characters, the unforgettable time travel plot, the stunning visuals, the combat, and of course, the outstanding soundtrack. The main theme and Frog's theme are two of my favorite tracks ever. Chrono Trigger also features multiple endings, which is dependent on when you defeat the final boss, which adds a load of replayability. It was also the game that coined the term New Game Plus, which is now seen in most modern JRPGs. Chrono Trigger is one of the few games that you would expect every JRPG fan to have played. It was incredible back in 1995 and it has stood the test of time. As the years tick on, the choices of top-tier games get even larger. 1996 was a hard decision with many important titles such as Star Ocean, Tactics Ogre, and Wild Arms. While the amount of PlayStation 1 JRPGs really started to grow around here, it was a certain Super Nintendo title that takes the crown for 1996. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. Squaresoft were so dominant during these years, and the fact that they took took the world's most popular video gaming franchise and turned it into a quality must-play JRPG says a lot. What I love about this game is that it takes everything we love about the Mario series, such as the characters, the world, and the platforming, and combines it with traditional JRPG elements that we would expect from the genre. It's almost like Mario was made to be a JRPG series. The best news is that Super Mario RPG is being remade and is set for release this November. I cannot wait to experience this classic in an entirely new way. A huge amount of my favourite JRPGs ever were released in 1997, but it just wouldn't sit right if I didn't have Final Fantasy VII as number one. If I was asked to label one single game as the landmark JRPG, it would be Final Fantasy VII. Its popularity and commercial success had an unparalleled impact on not only the popularity of the series, but the genre as a whole. Like I said with Chrono Trigger, this is an example of a game where everything went right. This dramatic story is driven by one of the strongest cast of characters I've ever seen, many of which soon became video game icons. Final Fantasy VII's popularity, of course, resulted in the compilation of FF7, which featured numerous games and movies to expand the universe even more. And more recently, the remake trilogy is the hot topic, with a phenomenal first title reminding me why I hold Final Fantasy VII so dear. I'm so sorry to all the other amazing JRPGs released this year, they never stood a chance. 1998 is a complete jerk of a year. Here we have two of my top 5 RPGs of all time, and picking one over the other is like asking me which of my children I love more. Sorry Xenogears, but I love Suikoden II more, but only a little. This was the second RPG I ever played, and wowee was it a beauty. Suikoden II takes place 3 years after the events of the first game and is set in a new region of the world. The Suikoden series is all about war, and like all of the other games, you start off as the underdogs, but eventually build your army into a force capable of defeating the opposing nations. While recruiting 108 characters to your cause, building up a HQ, and participating in large-scale war battles may be part of every game in the series, none do it better than Suikoden II. The characters and the story are just phenomenal. The narrative is a roller coaster of emotions, and there are few games out there with so many impactful moments. If you're unfortunate enough not to have experienced this masterpiece, then fear not. The first 2 games in the series are being remastered, and they're apparently going to be released this year, so stay tuned. And this brings us to the final year of the 90s, the year before the Y2K bug led the world into chaos. My best game of 1999 is Final Fantasy VIII, which was also the first RPG that I ever played. Nostalgia goggles or not, this game meant the world to me, introduced me to the genre, and is the reason that I'm making content like this today. From the absolutely incredible opening cinematic, to Zell's unnatural addiction to hot dogs, to the epic 4-form final boss with Maybe I'm a Lion playing, I was all aboard. I fell in love with this cast of characters and raced home from school every day just to see where their journeys would take them next. I also fell in love with Triple Triad, and it blew my mind that there was such an addictive, elaborate game within a game. I also fell in love with the soundtrack. Libere Fratelli, Eyes on Me, and The Landing were some of my favorites. Hell, I remember keeping a save before the Ragnarok scene with Squall and Renoir just so I could hear that song again. I also fell in love with spamming Circle a million times to unleash limit break after limit break. I also fell in love with drawing magic from enemies for hours. Nah, maybe not that part. My point is, little old me had a lot of love for this game, and after all of these years, it still remains one of my favorite games of all time. And then it was the year 2000, the birth of the PS2, the mass ownership of the Nokia 3310 that came with Snake, the start of my high school years where during class I would play Snake, and the year when the real Slim Shady finally stood up. The 2000s also came with loads of other great RPGs, but that is a story for another day. What did you think of this list? Do you agree with my favourites, or would you change a few things around? Let me know in the comments below. This was Hellfire RPGs, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, it would help me out a lot if you hit like and subbed for more RPG content coming soon. Also, you can hit that super thanks if you'd like to support the channel. See you next time.